No, one other element from the dating that was done in 1988, again, please clarify where I may have it wrong, or as you understand, I have it wrong, that it was dated back to, somewhere around the 1300s, right, when it was discovered.
Yeah.
Those pieces were taken, or at least supposedly taken, from the edges, or some of the edges of the cloth, where it could have been touched up. I think I heard like some nun, or someone within the religious establishment, I don't know exactly, touched it up, and so it's likely that those samples that were sent to, again, as I understand it, 3 independent research laboratories. Each of them were supposed to be doing it under like a placebo, or a blind test. And again, as I understand it, they were told when this was supposed to be from, the cloth sample. And so, of course, all of their dates just happened to align with the date they were told it was thought to be from. Does that align with your understanding?
Yeah, there are some questions about the integrity of the experiments that were done to perform the carbon dating. How much each of the laboratories knew about, how to conduct the experiment and such. But the bigger problem really is the cotton fibers that were woven into the edges. I mean, first of all, you have the problem of the fact that throughout the centuries, the edges of the shroud is the part that has been most touched by people who have picked it up and tried to put it on display, because they don't want to touch the main body of it, of course. So the edges are the parts that are by far the most contaminated, which means that those were the areas that were frayed more than the rest of the shroud. So the edges are sort of frayed and broken, and at different times in history, certain groups have tried to repair those pieces just to preserve the integrity of the shroud structure, but also to just make it look a little better as well, so that it doesn't come undone. So we know for a fact, for example, that the shroud was in a fire in the 1500s, and it was being kept in a silver box. The silver box started to melt from the fire, and the shroud actually suffered some burns on it. If you look at the shroud, you'll see that it has these very peculiar, like, triangular marks that are on there.
Can you go back to the image that you, because I know about it's like the psychedelic looking.
Yes, yeah, it almost looks like a psychedelic sort of ink blot, sort of a Rorschach test type of design there.
So you're talking about the white. Yeah,
those triangular patterns.
There's 4 of them. I see 4 on the left.
Exactly.
And then like 6 on the right.
Yeah, those are where the shroud was folded up, and then the fire burned the corners where it was folded. So those are actually holes in the shroud. But because there is what's called the Holland cloth sewn to the back of it, it looks like it's just part of the rest of the cloth, because I believe those patches are sewn up
that
as well.
White we're seeing, or that image, is the backing cloth,
right,
showing through the holes.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes,
I did not know that. So.
Yes, exactly. So we know that some nuns repaired the shroud at that time in the 1500s, and we also know, thanks to King Umberto II, who was the very last king of Italy, who lived in the 40s, according to him, his family is the one that owned the shroud up until the late 20th century. He was part of the House of Savoy. They were the ones who owned the shroud up to that point before, when he died, it went to the Vatican. But according to him, his family would take threads from the edges of the shroud and give them to each other as presents, as souvenirs. So they were literally taking pieces off of the edges of the shroud. So the edges were, eventually it started to look kind of bad. And so according to him, in the 1600s, the shroud edges were repaired by sewing cotton threads into the shroud that were dyed brown so that it would match the color of the shroud itself. And what makes this even more frustrating when you think about the carbon dating is that when the carbon dating was done in 1988, the scientists were already aware of these cotton fibers. And it's not entirely clear what steps they took to prevent contamination from those cotton fibers. So in 2005, a Shroud skeptic, someone who doesn't believe in the authenticity of the Shroud, he re-examined one of these samples that had been carbon dated, and he found cotton threads in that sample, which just goes to prove that the carbon dating tests were contaminated by the cotton threads.
So that's a main argument